Football season is back, and that means it's time for all of the armchair analysts of the world to go out and make some terrible preseason predictions. I'll be joining in the fray by giving you my preseason power rankings 1 through 32 for 2024. These rankings will indicate how strong I think every team is as of right now, but also my prediction on where I think they will generally place by the end of season standings. Let's make some terrible decisions. Starting at 32, the Carolina Panthers. Technically, this team ran by absolute clowns has nowhere to go but up after what we saw last year, but clearly it's going to take a few years to figure this out, and this one's going to have a lot of growing pains for sure. There's not many elite players on this team. You are going heavy on the development factor. It's only getting worse seeing as they got rid of arguably their best player in Brian Burns. And when you head down that path, usually there's a lot of ups and downs as you're depending on your second, third year players to pave the way towards being a potential superstar. The Panthers will unfortunately have to suck. Their defense is suspect to say the least, and their offense, it's all behind Bryce Young, who still has so much to prove as a player. He's got to show that he can be the guy in year 2. Because what we saw in his rookie season was unacceptable. Not all his fault by any means, but he has a long way to go before he can prove that he is an NFL-ready quarterback. And when you combine all of that with the fact that they play in an inconsistent but competitive NFC South, it's hard to imagine this team winning a lot of games. At number 31, I'm going with the Denver Broncos. Now, there's a lot of upside for the Broncos to finish quite a bit higher, as I do think they have more talent than some of the other teams I have named above them. However, I worry that offensively, they're going to struggle a lot. It's been an issue for this Broncos team the last couple of years, and this year will be no exception, I feel like, because they're depending on rookie quarterback Bo Nix, who was recently named the starter. I never thought of him as a first-round talent. I can see the upside there. Clearly, Sean Payton has a vision if he's already naming him the starter. He's looked pretty decent in preseason as well. But man, that is a lot of pressure to be putting on a quarterback who wasn't even supposed to go in the first round to begin with. So I believe there's going to be a lot of growing pains, and this is a year where the Broncos find out what they have. At number 30, we're going with the New York Giants. Let's be real, this is a slow-moving car crash, and they've been avoiding this tank for far too long. They need to embrace it fully. It's a shame to say that, because I do believe this Giants team has more talent than meets the eye, and they're fairly well coached by Brian Daboll, but that doesn't overcome all of the glaring issues with this team. Their offense is going to be terrible. It's very concerning. Daniel Jones is not the guy. We know what he is at this point. He's been in the league for 6 years. His peak is average at best, and his confidence is absolutely shot being on this team. He should not be a starting NFL quarterback. And with an offensive line that's still suspect, and with no Saquon Barkley, it's going to be even worse, and no amount of Malik Neighbors could possibly save that. And if that wasn't enough, the defense is highly questionable, especially when it comes to the secondary. With your starting corner being a second-year player in Deonte Banks, that tells me all I need to know. They are going to get absolutely torched. The pass rush is very promising this year, but it's not going to matter if someone is wide open literally every single play. This Giants team should be a disaster, and as a Giants fan, I kind of hope they are so they can finally tank properly. At 29, I'm going with the Patriots. Initially, I had them lower when doing this list a couple weeks ago, but I'm feeling slightly more confident as the days go by with them. Don't get me wrong, this is still the start of a rebuild. There's going to be a lot of struggles. They're clearly the worst team in their division, but defensively, they'll still probably be at least somewhat competent, and Drake May seems to be earning people's respect rather fast. And with some young players up with him, maybe he'll develop some good chemistry, and there could be some exciting moments for this Pats team. This is a year of experimentation. Anything can happen, so they'll probably be one of the worst teams. At number 28, I'm going with the Tennessee Titans. From a talent perspective, they're probably not bottom 5 in the league, but the thing is, I believe that they're trying too hard to win now and still be competitive, when clearly that time has already passed and they should be embracing a rebuild to figure out their next identity. To me, it feels like they went from Tannehill to Will Levis overnight, and they're just hoping that he'll be enough to get them back to the playoffs. It's cool that they gave him weapons to try and develop his confidence. I love the Calvin Ridley signing as well as Tony Pollard, but you don't know if Will Levis truly is your guy yet or not. He hasn't done anything in the NFL outside of a very small sample size. It's very unclear if he truly is worthy of being a starting quarterback in this league to me. And I think they're just trying to rush him too much, and as a result, it really could hurt his confidence, and this team's not going to play as well as they think, which could make things even worse, which leads me to believe that this year could be a collision course for failure and huge disappointment. Number 27, the Washington Commanders. The Commanders low-key have some decent upside if they can progress super fast. I'm a big believer in Jaden Daniels personally. I love his arm. I love the mobility. It gives the Commanders something they've desperately needed and something they haven't had since RG3. He'll make that offense really fun to watch, and I think the Commanders will be capable of winning some big games this year. However, he is a rookie. He'll have some ups and downs for sure. That offensive line maybe isn't the greatest. He could get injured with how much he likes to run, and the defense is probably going to let them down a lot, as it still hasn't improved all that much. The secondary still feels suspect. They're lacking on the defensive line as well, so it's probably not going to be a great year for the Commanders, but I see the potential, and I wouldn't be surprised if they place a lot higher. At number 26, I'm sadly going with the Minnesota Vikings. I initially had them a little bit higher, but after the J.J. McCarthy injury, I'm convinced that it's probably going to be a wash of a year for these guys. They have the talent necessary to still be solid. I like how their defense has been coming along since the end of last year, and with a healthy Justin Jefferson, obviously things are always going to be really exciting. They signed Aaron Jones to make the offense even stronger, but how much trust can you have in a guy like Sam Darnold? Unless the Vikings plan to make some kind of midseason trade out of desperation to be relevant, it's probably going to be him all year, and that means a lot of mediocrity incoming. I just can't get past that. I would like to because I think the rest of the team is fine, but if Sam Darnold's going to be the starting quarterback, I believe this team is in for a world of trouble, and I'll leave it at that. At the 25 spot, I'm throwing down the Arizona Cardinals. After what I saw last year, I'm kind of excited to watch this team with a healthy Kyler from start to finish, hopefully. They drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. That connection between him and Kyler is going to be something special, I believe. And on top of it, the offense in general should put up a good number of points, and it may lead to some big-time upsets against some of the better teams in the league. Trey McBride is an excellent tight end, it would seem. They have James Conner. They drafted at running back as well. A lot of promise on that side of the football, and I think the Cardinals could be a pretty scary underdog. However, on defense, they're lacking enough of the playmakers to be well-rounded enough, I feel, to be in that playoff/mid-level kind of tier. So I think they still have to go bottom half of the league, although I think there is a lot of upside for this team to be a lot better. Number 24, the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are a weird team, as they're definitely talented enough to potentially sneak into the playoffs, but after what we witnessed last year, it kind of seems like they're in a downward spiral, and they're refusing to give up when they just need to, when they need to hit that reset button. A lot of your top players are past their primes, and they're only getting older. Your salary cap situation is a disaster, and Derek Carr only seems to be getting worse by the year, with injury concerns on top of it all. This year will be a serious wake-up call. I believe it'll be a struggle from start to finish with this squad, and they're gonna realize how futile this is when they see the likes of Atlanta and Tampa Bay clearly take a step above them. Number 23, the Vegas Raiders. I consider myself to be slightly higher on the Raiders than the average fan might place them, and that's because I just think that their consistency is going to help them out a lot. There's no more of the toxic drama that they dealt with last year. No Jimmy G, no McDaniels, everything is fresh, and they're playing for a coach that they like. And they have the making of a lot of things that could be a potential playoff team. You've got a good number one receiver in Devontae. While you did lose Josh Jacobs, Zamir White could be a promising running back replacement. Your tight end room is absolutely stacked. And at QB, you have a chance to maybe be slightly better now that you have Gardner Minshew there. That defensive line is going to make things a nightmare and keep some of these games close. You can't even tell me that Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins won't be something special. This Raiders team has promise. I don't know if they have enough of it to truly be a competitor, but they're on the cusp. Number 22. The Seattle Seahawks. I love Geno Smith, and I think he can still be a very capable starter in the league, but he's another year older, and his physical prime is far behind him at this point, and that could be an issue with this year in particular, as the Seahawks offensive line is extremely questionable. After losing multiple starters in the offseason, and some of the other ones being young and unproven, it makes me think the Seahawks may have one of the worst offensive lines in all of football, and if Geno can't maneuver in the pocket, he's going to get hit a lot, and you need to have time to let those plays develop so DK can absolutely dominate a defense. And with this being a first-year head coach for them, and with the defense still not being anything close to elite, this might be a struggle year for the Seahawks. Number 21, the LA Chargers. This might be one of the most difficult teams to rank in all of the league. On one hand, we don't know if that defense is going to improve nearly enough for it to actually matter in year one under Jim Harbaugh. But also, who the hell is Justin Herbert going to throw the ball to on the other end? Jim Harbaugh in 1 year may not be enough to truly save this team. It's reasonable to believe such a thing, but at the same time, we know the upside that he can bring to any football team based off of his pedigree, based off of the history with what he did with Michigan and with the 49ers beforehand. It's so hard to say what'll happen, and ultimately it comes down to what you believe in more. Jim Harbaugh being a really good coach, or this team just not having enough talent to be truly competitive in his first year there. I align somewhere in the middle where I think this team could be on the path to potentially being a playoff contender, but they maybe don't have enough to get over the hump. The Colts are difficult to get a grasp on. They absolutely overachieved last year, but a lot of it came once their franchise quarterback Anthony Richardson went down with an injury and Gardner Minshew took over. Number 20, the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are difficult to get a grasp on. They absolutely overachieved last year, but a lot of it came once their franchise quarterback Anthony Richardson went down with an injury and Gardner Minshew took over. It's tough, right? On one hand, clearly this team is a lot better than we thought, but at the same time, now it's with a different QB under center, and Anthony Richardson didn't play that many games before that injury happened, and I'm still not all that confident in him. We had such a small sample size. It almost feels like he's still a rookie in a way, and there's so much that's left to prove for him. He's a good dual threat quarterback, and there is promise with a decent O-line in front of him, good wide receivers, and of course Jonathan Taylor there, but it's going to be on him to show the progression and make the right decisions, and I don't know if he has it in him to do that. How far the Colts go all depends on him. If he shows progression, if he continues to play better, this Colts team will thrive and they have a chance to potentially make the playoffs. If not, if we see a lot of struggles as young quarterbacks often show, then this could be a rough year for the Colts. I think there's a lot of things that could go right and wrong with this team, which is why it's worth putting them somewhere in the middle. Number 19, the Pittsburgh Steelers. No matter how poor this team feels on paper, no matter how unfun they are to watch, they always find a way to be relevant. They always either go above 500 or make the playoffs somehow, every year without fail. And with that in mind, I feel like I have to place them at least somewhere in the middle at the very least. I mean, if they can make the playoffs with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph as their QBs, then what does that say about Justin Fields and Russell Wilson being their quarterback room? Not one that you feel all that confident in, but definitely a step above compared to what we saw last year. And that enough alone might make the Steelers a better football team. If they can even be somewhat stable and competent on offense, that might be all it takes, as we already know the defense is going to carry them to some wins with guys like TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick there. This Steelers team is right on the cusp. They might miss out just because it feels like some other teams in the AFC are maybe getting a little bit better, but it's close, and they really might have a chance of making it through. Number 18. The Chicago Bears. Man, I almost feel like I'm overselling here. I'm probably putting them a little too high, but I just can't resist the hype this go around. This Bears team feels different compared to previous years, where people had to try so hard to sell you that hype with Justin Fields there. Something about this team and their demeanor feels a lot different, like they're finally starting to turn that corner. They're overdue for a good year, and this is the time to. Their team has a lot of talent, they've continued to add on during the offseason, and they have a generational quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams, who by all account has looked really good so far over there in Chicago. And while there's no guarantee of success in the NFL ever, Caleb certainly has the talent to make it happen, and he's arguably walking into the greatest offensive situation of any rookie quarterback in the history of the league. With 3 potential Pro Bowl caliber wide receivers, Cole Kmet at tight end, and a great running back committee, this Bears team is gonna fly. And with a defense that is definitely making steady progress, I would not want to run into this Chicago team. And officially taking us to the halfway mark at the 17 spot is the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags, as we know, last year had a pretty epic collapse after a great start. They clearly still have the talent to be fine, and I think now that Trevor Lawrence is going to hopefully be fully healthy, that things will go a lot better for them. I believe that the Trevor Lawrence disrespect in the timeline has been a bit too much lately. He still is a talented QB. The offense, it's basically still the same. I know they lost Calvin Ridley, but in return they got Brian Thomas, and I think him and T-Law could have a pretty promising connection in front of them. The issue right now, which is why I can't put them any higher, is I don't know if it's enough for them to be a playoff team. Their defense is less than stellar, and that division of theirs just isn't free anymore. It felt like that was such an easy way to generate wins back in the day, and that's just not going to be the case now with where the Texans are at, with the Colts as well. They're going to lose more of those games that they're accustomed to winning, and I worry that could be the difference between them being in the playoffs and watching from home. Number 16, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs definitely surprised last year, and it seems like they're still on trajectory to be around the same level again. This is a consistent, well-rounded roster. However, I'm a little worried about age regression with some of their star players, and of course Baker Mayfield, and whether or not he can have a consistently good season for the second year in a row, which is something he's never done in his career up until this point. That's going to be the ultimate decider on if this Bucs team can still hang in the race for the NFC South in the playoffs, and this might be his best opportunity to do so. Tampa's in a pretty good place, but whether or not it'll be enough in a changing NFC, and with the Atlanta Falcons getting better, will be a different question. There'll be ups, and there will definitely be downs, just like we saw last year, but this team is certainly good enough to hang in there with the best and be in the thick of it come playoff time. Speaking of the Falcons, they're going to be my number 15 squad. I think them and the Buccaneers are very close when it comes to skill level and who might come out on top in the NFC South, but I do give a slight edge to the Falcons thanks to their acquisition of Kirk Cousins. There's very obvious concerns that come with picking up a quarterback that's getting up there in age, who's coming off a significant injury, but you can't change the fact that Atlanta were almost the winners of their division with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke at quarterback. Putting Kirk in there is an immediate upgrade. Kind of sad for Atlanta fans because it's only Kirk Cousins, but if he's anything like what we saw in Minnesota pre-injury, this is going to be huge for them, and their offense is going to be better than we've seen in a very long time. This team, low-key from top to bottom, is not bad. Their defense isn't terrible. They've got good playmakers over there, and just the idea of Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson having a good player to feed them the ball consistently makes me think fairly highly of this Falcons team, and I'm looking forward to watching them compete in the NFC. Number 14. The Cleveland Browns. I'll admit it, I was very wrong about this team last year in my power rankings, as they very much lived up to the hype that analysts were giving them, and it's pretty easy to see why. Not only do they have a good bit of talent on their roster, but that defense is genuinely terrifying. With Myles Garrett and a plethora of elite talent surrounding him, this Browns team, if they avoid injuries, are probably still very easily a top 5 unit in the NFL, and in all likelihood they will continue to carry this team and keep them in games. A good defense is such an underrated tool these days, and it so often lifts the ceilings of these teams that you're not so sure about. Now, what could make placing the Browns high up in the power rankings risky is offense, but certainly not for a lack of talent. Not after the year that Amari Cooper and Dave Njoku had, not after acquiring Jerry Jeudy in the offseason, and hopefully getting Nick Chubb back from a significant injury looking in prime form again. It's because of the quarterback play. As always, we're looking to see if Deshaun Watson can regain the skill that he once had in Houston. It won't take much, that's the sad part. We know how scary this Browns team can be based off of what we saw with Joe Flacco off the couch. If Deshaun can even be close to that level, this Browns team is going to be very hard to beat this year. But of course, it all comes down to Deshaun and how he can play. How well this team plays this season rests on his shoulders, and it ultimately makes them a very risky team to believe in, but nonetheless, the talent just might get them to the playoffs anyway. Number 13, the LA Rams. I'm a little surprised at what the Rams showed me in 2023. I was expecting them to be pretty bad. It felt like this was the end of the era and that they were going to die like a pathetic husk of a team that sold their soul for a Super Bowl ring. But no, they're still full of life, and right now, with their current regime, they're in a great position to be a competitor yet again. Matt Stafford still has some good years left in him. Cooper Kupp is hopefully going to look healthy and be there right from the beginning of the season. It's only Puka Nakua's second year in the league after the crazy rookie season we just saw from him, and the running back room got even stronger thanks to their recent draft. This high-powered offense will be dangerous, and I think it might just be enough to carry them into the playoffs. Of course, there's a lot of concerns about their defense, which hasn't looked the hottest the last couple of years, and is arguably the scariest it's ever been in terms of its holes thanks to Aaron Donald's retirement. That defense could be literal Swiss cheese this year, and it might result in a lot of high-scoring affairs. But I think with the execution of their offense, they might prevail in a lot of those situations. It's going to be a struggle, and I don't think the record's going to be god tier or anything, but with how great this offense feels on paper, I think it's necessary to put them amongst some of the top contenders. Number 12. The Buffalo Bills. Yeah, I'm not as high on Buffalo this year as are many other people out there. This team has changed so much, and they're highly questionable on both sides of the football. Buffalo will need some new contributors, and it seems more like now than ever before that they don't have a true elite playmaker to pass the ball to, and that could result in Josh Allen having to try hard even more and put this team on his back, leading to some potential mistakes in the making as he tries to force plays. And honestly, the defense looks pretty shaky as well, as they've lost multiple key contributors in the secondary, and Von Miller is clearly getting up there in age, and he's just not as impactful as he once was. When I look at this team, they don't feel like a Super Bowl worthy squad anymore. Maybe that dream will have to be put on pause for the time being until they can retool. But at the end of the day, they still are the Bills. They still do have the experience from recent years, that motivation to move forward, and of course, they have Josh Allen under center. He is a typical carry quarterback, and we've seen throughout the recent years that sometimes that great quarterback play can make a difference even when the rest of your roster has big question marks behind it. We saw Josh Allen do it in 2023, and I'm a firm believer he could do it once again, although this time it's going to be a lot harder than it was before. I wish Buffalo the best of luck because this is going to be a very challenging road ahead of you. Number 11. The Miami Dolphins. This team could very easily be one of the best in the AFC. They could be a top 10 team. They can win their division for sure, but I don't know how seriously I can take them. I think they have a pretty balanced team. The talent is definitely there. They worked hard to make their defense better during the offseason. They still have the same weapons at wide receiver for a dangerous pass game, and Chan will be back from injury, so your running back room will be fully healthy. But just something about them being unproven makes me not totally confident in this group. The Dolphins have shown immense potential throughout the years. I mean, some insane feats. But when it comes down to clutch time, they always disappear. Playing in the cold against these top teams, trying to close out their division in January, they never seem to do it. They feel like a regular season team to me, and while that's good enough to make you in the top half of the rankings, it's not enough to be considered an elite team. Until they show me that they can do it, that they can be successful when it matters, I'm not going to take them seriously. Now on to the top 10, where you do get some examples of clutch, starting off with the Houston Texans. I'm a little scared on being too high on these guys. This is a bit of a risk considering that they're still a young team and they only have a second-year quarterback and all. But last year was just so great, knowing that they've already won a playoff game, and CJ Stroud is on track to be one of the best players in the entire league. And now the offense is even better. He has more weapons at his disposal. Aside from Tank Dell and Nico Collins, you add in Stephon Diggs, who has some attitude problems, but is obviously still an elite wide receiver when he's out there playing his best. And you add in Joe Mixon at running back, who is a significant upgrade over Devin Singletary in my opinion. With the current setup, this Texans offense could have some serious wow factor, to the point where maybe they could even make the AFC Championship game this year. However, I don't have that much confidence in them just yet because of the defense. They aren't up to par with the other side of the ball just yet, and I think they may get torn to shreds at times, and because of that lack of balance, there's going to be some serious questions if they're ready to compete just yet. Who maybe is a bit more ready to take that leap could be the Green Bay Packers, who I have at number 9. I'm pretty high on the Packers. They're ahead of schedule. They almost got to the NFC Championship. They've already shown me they can be competitive in the NFC in just his first year as the starter. This Pack team got better as the season went along, and I think they'll be even stronger and more consistent this year. I think offensively, the Packers may be a little bit better since it's Jordan Love's second year as the full-time starter. You got Josh Jacobs, who might have a slightly higher ceiling than Aaron Jones, and I like Jaden Reed a lot personally. I think he's going to be an absolute stud, and it will be a breakout year for him and Jordan Love. And I'm also a fan that their defense made some improvement. You fired Joe Barry, who was just a terrible coordinator for them, and you picked up Xavier McKinney, who was one of the top-tier safeties in the league on the Giants last year. Green Bay have a squad, and last year they already showed such a great peak so early on in this retooling process. If they're already that far along and they make the improvements and it shows in their results on the football field, this will be a scary team to beat. Speaking of the Packers, at number 8, we got the New York Jets. Definitely a risky pick here from me, but I'm all in on these guys. I think Rodgers is going to stay healthy this year, and we're going to see what was advertised on paper last year before the tragic injury. I mean, the Jets won 7 games last year and won some pretty big ones against some tough teams without Rodgers, with absolute bums at quarterback, with one of the league worst offenses. Rodgers doesn't even need to be what he was in Green Bay. If he's just reliable, if he still proves to be a good decision maker, then this Jets team is going to see exponential growth. All those winnable games that they just couldn't get by because they had Zach Wilson suddenly become W's in my eyes, and honestly, they have a really nice squad here. They have one of the better defenses in the NFL, but it was hard to see last year because they were on the field all the time. They've got premium players at a lot of the most important positions, and now Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall can unleash even more of their potential with an elite quarterback by their side. I think Aaron Rodgers wants to make one more push towards greatness before potentially hanging it up, and I think the Jets are going to reap the benefits from that and put up a solid season. Moving on to the number 7 spot, I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys didn't do much to improve during the offseason, which is definitely a concern. They got a bit worse in some specific areas, but I think they'll hold it down. The Cowboys usually benefit from a relatively easy schedule. I think they'll do more of the same here, and they definitely still do have talent on both sides of the football. I think their secondary with a healthy Trayvon Diggs will be absolutely terrifying to deal with. And on top of it all, Dak is coming off a really great season. It's a contract year for him. He's going to play angry to try and break the bank of Jerry Jones, and CeeDee Lamb is coming off a breakout year as well. The Cowboys have the tools to be successful, and I think they might be even more efficient because of Ezekiel Elliott returning. The dude may be washed, but he's fat and he can run into the end zone, which is something they were severely lacking with Tony Pollard 1 year beforehand. The Cowboys are a team that I never take too seriously, but you can't exactly take them lightly either. If they could actually figure out how to use their team correctly and not suck in the playoffs, they could be pretty threatening. Number 6, the Cincinnati Bengals. It's all about the health of Joe Burrow in this situation. That's what I'm basing this off. I know what their ceiling is. We've seen them make 2 straight AFC championships in the past when he is healthy, and he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. That's all I need to know. Oftentimes, elite quarterback play is the thing that elevates you, and the Bengals have already benefited from that multiple times. I wish this dude didn't change his hair, but I digress. Joe Burrow's insane, and with him being there, the Bengals are a massive threat. However, there are some things that could hold them back and make this ranking look very foolish. There's the idea of Burrow getting hurt behind an offensive line that still has holes in it, or the fact that their running back room is a bit different. They have decent guys to replace Joe Mixon, but that dude was a touchdown machine, and not having such a reliable player is not easy to replace. And the defense is getting older as well, which are all things that might hold them back from being a top team in the AFC, but just knowing the upside alone and that it's been a while since Burrow's actually been healthy, I think the Bengals are in for a bounce back year. Rolling into my number 5 spot is the Baltimore Ravens. While they lost a few pieces here and there, that defense is still pretty disgusting, and I fear that we're in a world where the Ravens are seriously going to control the time of possession in most games they play. That run game is absolutely ridiculous. Adding in Derrick Henry is terrifying for the rest of the league. Between him and Lamar and like a read option setup and just continuously pounding the ball down your throat, they're not going to go for a lot of those big plays. They're going to kill you with the short yardage and just win at the line of attrition. They're going to kill the clock and exhaust you between the dynamic speed and change of direction with Lamar and Derrick Henry just powering through you to reach the end zone for these touchdowns. And then when you finally get the ball back, multiple minutes are going to be gone and you might just end up having a 3 and out because of that scary defense, and then all of a sudden you're down multiple scores and it's already the second quarter. I think the Ravens have set themselves up beautifully to be a very good team yet again, but I just don't know if they can get over the hump because of what Lamar has shown me in the playoffs beforehand. He's going to need to take that extra step if the Ravens want to be a Super Bowl team. At number 4, I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll get it out of the way. There are some downsides with this Eagles team that could be a major cause for concern. I mean, first and foremost, there's no guarantee your secondary is going to be where you need it to just because you addressed it in the draft. But second of all, you lost Jason Kelce to retirement, who was so important in terms of calling out protections and the tush push and whatnot. That's a valuable member that you just can't replace. It's not possible. However, I'm a believer that there's more upsides with this team than potential downs, as first and foremost, Jalen Hurts is back to full health. It was clear he was dealing with some stuff last year and it affected his ability to run, which is a very important part of his game and the Eagles offense. You also changed up your coordinator situation, which could help both with pass coverage and with some of your play calling that was very easily predictable. And just to finish it off, you add on Saquon Barkley, who is the best running back the Eagles have had since LaShawn McCoy. He's such a talented back. He's multi-dimensional, a guy who can catch balls out of the backfield, someone who's always capable each and every down of developing explosive plays for your team, which is something the Eagles were severely lacking with their running back room in 2023. This Eagles team addressed a lot of their needs and overall look very primed to be one of the best teams in the NFC yet again. They had a bit of a meltdown last year, but I think they move on from it and they bounce back strong. However, I don't know if they're even top 2 in the NFC yet, and that's because at number 3, I'm throwing down the Detroit Lions. I love this Lions team, man. They have a lot of heart, they're unpredictable, they're risky with their gambles, and they were so close to making it to the Super Bowl last year. The Lions have guts and the right mentality of an underdog that has led to some great stories in the past with some miracle Super Bowl teams. They give off that feeling for me. Now, I don't know for sure if Jared Goff can be a Super Bowl level quarterback, but he's gotten to multiple big games in the past, and maybe he's ready to take that step now. He just has to play well, and his teammates will certainly do the rest, with a great offensive line, with Jahmyr Gibbs hopefully taking another step, same with Sam Laporta, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. It's a great scheme overall, and this Lions team's going to put up a lot of points. Now, I do wonder if they're balanced enough to actually get to the Super Bowl, because their defense certainly has some holes in it, but if last year is any indication, their guts and their firepower alone just might let them power through. And at number 2, I'm sticking with the Super Bowl runner-up, San Francisco 49ers. This Niners team undoubtedly could still be the best team in the NFC. They've still got some dogs on that defensive line. Christian McCaffrey is still in his prime. And even if you lose Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel's still a good multi-purpose player, and that means that you could get George Kittle more involved with your team. And don't forget, they drafted at wide receiver as well. Now, these dramas could certainly hold this team back, and it could hurt their mentality, but I'd like to think that management knows what's on the line, and that there's too much at risk to not make the appropriate choices for these scenarios, like with the Trent Williams contract situation, and deciding what to do with Brandon Ayuk. They don't have the worst problems in the world in their hands currently. And just knowing that this team has so many talented players with a quarterback that's still on his rookie contract, the future is still bright for this Niners team, and their window is not closed just yet. And of course, at number 1, that leaves the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are attempting to do something that has literally never been done before by winning 3 straight Super Bowls. And to me, it feels like they're very capable of pulling this off. That's a very tough feat to ask, but with Patrick Mahomes as your QB, clearly anything is possible. He got some help from the defense, but I saw this man do the impossible last year, where it seemed like he had no receiver help, but they found a way to win anyway and be efficient with the ball, especially come December and January. It seems like their running game has gotten a lot better with Pacheco there, and they drafted Xavier Worthy at wide receiver, which could help bring back some of the explosive plays that this team just hasn't seen since the Tyreek Hill days. The offense is on track to be better than what we saw last year, and let's not forget that the defense still should be very reliable. Maybe not quite in the same elite tier as last year, but they could still very easily be a top 10 unit in the league with a happy Chris Jones still dominating, plus a pretty decent secondary overall. The Chiefs may not even have the best roster on paper, and they may struggle at times like what we saw last year. But with the best quarterback in the league, and arguably the best head coach as well, and all of their proven feats, you can never, ever count out the Chiefs, and in my opinion, they still very well could be the best team in football. And that'll do it for my 2024 NFL preseason power rankings. Thank you all so much for watching, and be sure to like the video and subscribe for more NFL content.